I'm Tony Roberts.
And we're here on behalf of our daughter, Forever 14, England Roberts.
My name is Judy Rogg, and this is my son, Eric Robinson.
My name is Deb Schmel. I'm from Massachusetts. I lost my daughter, Becca, in 2020. She's forever 18.
Joanne Bogart from Indiana. My son, Mason, forever 15.
I'm Annie McGrath. This is my son, Griffin McGrath. I am here for him and all the kids.
Lori Schott, my daughter, Anna Lee, forever 18 from Colorado.
My name's Amy Neville, and I'm here on behalf of my son, Alexander, who lost his life at the age of 14 to fentanyl poisoning via Snapchat.
Hi, my name is Juliana Arnold. I'm here on behalf of my daughter, Coco, forever 17.
My name is Tammy Rodriguez. I'm from Connecticut, and I'm here to represent my daughter, Selena, who died by suicide in 2021 at 11 years old.
Their pain is palpable. God, give them your strength. Those were some of the names of the children who've been lost after using social media in different ways. I mean, you saw that. But there are so many more, and their parents are demanding accountability now. Actually, they want justice. Those can be two different things. Yesterday, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg defended his platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, before a jury. Zuckerberg claimed people used Instagram because it was quote unquote useful, and that some features like beauty filters were available but not recommended. He admitted it was very difficult to enforce age limit rules, but that keeping teenage users safe has always been a priority for his company. Today, two former Meta employees turned whistleblowers are expected to take the stand. So the trial is ongoing. He's not there today. It's the whistleblowers. One, a former VP, has accused the company of putting engagement over safety. Meta has denied that allegation with this. The reverse is true. We've intentionally designed automatic defaults like sleep mode that encourage teens to leave the app and pause notifications overnight. Parents can go even further by restricting their teens' total time to as little as 15 minutes a day or setting scheduled breaks when teens are required to exit our apps. I don't know how many teenagers they know, Paul, but those teenagers can work those phones.
Yeah, and the teenagers always know more about these devices than the parents do, right? I mean, kids these days, 9, 10 years old, they grow up with it. We have a generation now that has never not had the screen. And think about how different they're digital beings, essentially. And it's a very, very different thing than obviously the way all of us grew up. All I'm going to say, my heart obviously goes out to these parents, and something is going to have to be done here. I just would say this. There should be an element of caution. I think likely the way this is going to go, there's either going to be a settlement or the social media companies are going to lose. But we've all gotten used to a certain libertarian aspect of the internet, which was what its original promise was. And the counterfactual here is censorship, which many of us have spoken up against. We saw it during COVID. In fact, Facebook was implicated. So we should just remember there is another side to this. Let's not destroy the whole thing in trying to safeguard kids. I agree with the idea that it has to be safer for children, but you need more parental engagement. I'm sorry, but you do. And otherwise, what you're going to do is you're going to offload these apps to places from overseas that the kids are going to figure out a way to get to anyway. So I think that what we have to do is recognize that these are businesses that are successful for a reason. And when this thing all washes out, let's mend it, not end it.
So I think the causation question is what's at stake here. You know, was the reason they're successful because they made these algorithms and platforms addictive? That's the heart of this case.
Right, and I know, you know, to his point, kids in Australia are faking out social media. The whole point is their mitigation measures, first of all, arguably, in that this is in the parents' arguments, are not enough to overcome the product design and the algorithmic influence on what their children see. And B, they also don't work because the kids circumvent it by doing whatever they can. As you said, kids are going to be kids. It's sort of, I think, moronic to even think that those mitigation techniques would be useful or successful against teen use. What struck me, and you and I have been talking about this, is the variation of situations of the kids. This is not just relegated or about kids that become addicted to screen time and then start devolving their self-worth and take their own lives. There's drug use and drug acquisition and bullying, and in addition to self-esteem, like there's so much, in addition to all the sexual predator stuff that we've talked about writ large. So I think also, and now this is a second point, that when we have Zuckerberg testifying about those mitigative measures that they've taken in place, well, there's a million other apps. Like, these kids are not just on Meta, right? Remember, we've been talking about this. This is a holistic thing. The whistleblower's testimony today will be vital because it will loop in the causation that you're talking about, the nexus of these kids, and we all know the proof. The proof is not necessarily in an email. It's the proof that my beautiful daughter was an incredible, vivacious, alive, confident girl, and 6 months later she was dead by her own hand. Parents know that absolute downward spiral, and they know what the cause is. The whistleblower's testimony today will be vital.
Her own hand holding something that potentially was so addictive she couldn't put it down with her own hand. Lisa.
Well, I think one thing, too, this is obviously a civil trial, so the bar is lower than a criminal trial. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. It's preponderance of the evidence, so it just has to be more than 50% likely. I would also say that Meta has already faced damages, and so have these social media companies. Even if this case is not successful, look at the public arena. These companies are rightfully being tarnished. You have legal fees, right? So there's already damages, in my opinion, that have been extracted here. Also, I think one of the biggest whistleblowers beyond this trial specifically is Frances Haugen, that former data scientist and a product manager for then Facebook, now Meta, who copied and released tens of thousands of documents to Wall Street Journal, to regulators, to Congress. And in some of that internal research, one side stated, we make body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teenage girls. So, one, you've got a standard that's much lower than a criminal trial. And, these social media companies have already faced a lot of damages. I'm not saying they shouldn't face more, but they're already hurting.
Yeah, Mark Zuckerberg said yesterday, we have been trying to do age verification since before 2019, removing people from the platform. He went through everything that's been put in place by Meta to try to keep these teens off. One thing I would note, however, is that in the United Kingdom, 30% of 10 to 12-year-olds report being on Meta. So what is happening and what is in place clearly is not working. I think, though, the answer to this, it's more than just litigation. I have said this before, I'll say it again, it is legislation. And I was very intrigued. The Economist, which I read every week, says why social media bans will not work. Really interesting data in there, but it says that 12 countries are currently considering these social media bans. Their argument is that teens find ways to circumvent these. They do. They crinkle their face, they even note, if they're doing facial recognition, going to those kind of links to circumvent them. I don't think that's a good argument. Alcohol, people circumvent all the time. People have alcohol before the age of 21. Is that a reason to remove the age limit for alcohol? I do not think so. There is one argument that this could move teens into other platforms like Discord or like Roblox. But that's something that we can handle as a society. Maybe you have teen bans there as well. But what I would say is just the preliminary data out of Australia. There were 4.7 million accounts deactivated after their ban on youth went in place, and there are only 2.7 million teens that fall in that age category. So that's some promising early data, and I await to see what else comes out of Australia.
And I know you're a fan of that, the 16 and under, and what Australia has done. Look, why not just throw everything at the wall? And by the way,
absolutely,
Mark Zuckerberg saying that they tried everything and they couldn't figure it out. That doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence in somebody who's got almost $1 trillion company, or however big that number is that they've got in terms of the value of Facebook and all of Meta. But I mean, I would say then if you fail, then keep trying.
There you go.
Yeah,
Pandora's
and
box.
partner with us as parents. Like you don't have to be the boogeyman. We could be friends. But you know who can't come to the table? The kids. Yeah.
Exactly.
You know what the truth is? If you're going to set yourself up as a global utility, which is really what they are, it's the phone system for the entire world, comes with a lot of responsibility, guys, and we haven't really seen that commensurately.
Yep.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.